If your crossover shopping starts in Excel, the 2026 Mazda CX-5 is already losing. $41,000, 3,856 pounds, 187 naturally aspirated horsepower, and a 6-speed automatic in a world where even refrigerators have 8 modes and an app. The Honda CR-V wins the measurable stuff. Mazda's betting there are still buyers who understand that steering geometry, torque transfer, brake feel, and weight distribution can matter more than a bigger number on a dealer window sticker. The rest of this review is basically finding out whether Mazda was right. The first place this 2026 CX-5 has to defend itself is with the engine, because in 2026, 187 horsepower may read like a clerical error. Bore and stroke numbers are 89 millimeters by 100 millimeters, and undersquare engines are happy to deliver torque and then just go home for the day. But here, it gives you peak power at 6,000 RPM and will run up to a 6,500 RPM redline. On paper, the engine architecture and the power and torque curves are having a quiet family argument. From the driver's seat, they've worked it all out. My drive, or the different drive modes, is accessible here on the steering wheel or through a button on the screen, and there are 3 modes. There's sport that we're in now, there's normal, and there's off-road, and we know on this channel going off-road is all about the tire, and we're not going very far off-road with these all seasons. I prefer to drive in sport mode because it sharpens throttle response, it holds gears longer, it'll hold the right gear through corners, does all of the right things for drivers like you and me. Off-road changes the torque distribution of the all-wheel drive system and optimizes traction and stability control systems. Mazda doesn't publish the exact calibration data of those different drive modes, but these are not decorative. There's a noticeable difference between all of them, and that off-road mode has been properly tuned for light off-road use. For 2026, Mazda's added a software-based protocol to mimic a limited slip diff. When one front wheel starts to slip, it grabs the brake and then allows that torque to get distributed to the other wheel with grip. Sure, a mechanical limited slip diff might be a nice to have, especially in a driver's crossover like this CX-5, but this software is doing some legitimate work. It's the kind of low-grip traction intervention that you're actually going to feel and give you more confidence behind the wheel. Plus, for 2026, Mazda ties the new electronic brake limited slip function into that same control logic, while the all-wheel drive coupling reacts to steering input in parallel. You don't feel the systems working. You feel the presence of more precision in the corners, which usually isn't a characteristic of crossovers in this segment. The engine explains why this CX-5 is better than the numbers suggest. The chassis tuning explains why Mazda bothered. This engine, 13-to-1 compression on 87 octane. Those kind of numbers used to require race gas and a tuner who knew the name of your firstborn. Mazda gets you there from the factory with a warranty. Top speed, 116 miles an hour, but come on, you're never going to see that. Paddle shifters are exclusive to the top trims, and maybe that's Mazda's way of acknowledging that buyers of the other trims were never going to shift with the paddles anyway. And perhaps Mazda's correct about that, because it's only drivers like us who want to control that gearbox manually. Subscribers get notified when the next episode drops. Everybody else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to see when our new episodes hit YouTube, well, that's what the subscribe button does. This is the part of the episode where the CX-5 starts arguing its case. The steering's quick for a crossover. It's closer to hot hatch quick than a CR-V. What that means in corners like this, you actually don't need a lot of lock. These are some short radius corners, and we don't need all that much lock in the wheel to get through the set of corners. This changes directions quickly, easily, and it's clear just from steering this CX-5 that Mazda's lineage is baked into the steering rack, not from a badge that the marketing department decided to stick on sometime after that lunch meeting. GVC Plus still does the quiet Mazda thing. On corner entry, it cuts torque to load the front tires, and then it will lightly grab the outside front brake on corner exit to help settle the car and give you that perfect exit. It's remarkable in two ways, in its subtlety and in the confidence that it gives you. This is perhaps the most well-balanced crossover in the segment. From corner entry through mid-corner to corner exit, you can easily control the attitude of the CX-5, whether it's with the steering, the throttle, the brake, whatever the case is. This is a crossover that responds to drivers. Plus, when it comes to damping, body and wheel control is excellent. There's no excessive secondary movements. There's never any instances where you hit large road imperfections and this feels unsettled. Even with mid-corner bumps, this just absorbs them, settles down, and gets back to the business of getting you through the corner. I don't know how they do it, but in the corner, steering effort builds naturally, and I know this is an electrically assisted rack, but they are definitely working some magic. No, you're not going to get a tremendous amount of feel from the two front contact patches through to the steering wheel. Even when you're throwing this around in the corners, and maybe you've got one corner unweighted, ABS intervention doesn't jump in and surprise you. It waits a little bit, and the way they've tuned that ABS intervention is fantastic. When you do want full ABS in those emergency situations, the car also knows, because you've hit that brake pedal with such force, and you get 100% braking. It's very clever. It's the way it should be, and yes, maybe the car is taking over a little bit when it comes to emergency braking, but I'd rather have that functionality than otherwise. And with full ABS stops, you've got all the confidence in the world that this is going to stop quickly and you're still going to be able to maintain steering control. Four-wheel disc brakes, the hardware is not that terribly remarkable. Ventilated discs at the front, solid discs at the rear, single piston calipers all around, and despite all that, this brake pedal is gold. Pedal effort might be on the light side, but this isn't a sports car after all. But feel, control, modulation, all 10 out of 10. Love this brake pedal, especially when the corners get interesting. I can control the attitude of the CX-5 quite easily on corner entry just with the brake pedal alone. This is well done brake calibration. Yes, there is some body roll, but it's another one of those feedback loops to let you know what you're doing when you're having fun in the corners. It's not excessive, it's very well controlled, and the trade-off is you have a comfortable ride. Instead of Mazda delivering you a crossover that corners perfectly flat, but then punishes you with day-to-day ride quality. The top trims get 19s with 55 series rubber. The lower trims get 17s with 65 series sidewalls. If we're doing some public math, that's about 18% more sidewall, and that's definitely not glamorous. On the other hand, you may want the 17s if your roads are as well maintained as mine are in Toronto. The 19s win the photo op, the 17s win the Toronto Tuesday morning rush hour commute. If you want to support the channel beyond just watching, well, the link to the merch store is here, and your support there means more time for us to produce episodes like this and a little less time worrying about industry access. No pressure, just an option. Inside, Mazda has a harder job because their interiors have been overwhelmingly premium for the last several years. And here, their job is to modernize this cabin, make it better, but also avoid turning every driver into an unpaid software tester. Top trim gets this 15.6-inch screen, which is the largest ever in a Mazda. Everything else runs the 12.9-inch screen. Fun fact, both screens run the same Google built-in software underneath. This one looks better on camera, and the reality is most car buying decisions today happen through pictures and bad financial decisions. In some ways, perhaps the smaller screen is the one to go with because then there's less dashboard drama. Yes, Mazda moved the climate controls to the touchscreen, and that's going to anger everyone who believes that civilization peaked with 3 rotary dials and a CD slot. And maybe they're not wrong. Climate controls are one tap away, or 0 taps if you say, hey, Google, I'm cold. Whether you like it or not, the reality is that voice control of all our devices is coming very, very soon, whether that's your phone, your tablet, your laptop, or your car. And sure, I may prefer buttons, you may prefer buttons, but I'm not going to pretend that this is a constitutional crisis. The hip point is definitely crossover tall, but in the CX-5, it's more about sitting in it than on top of it. I have a fantastic seating position here. Great interface to the steering wheel. Lots of adjustment in the steering column. And then I've got a great interface to the pedals. Perfectly supported in the seat. Maybe you could use a little more bolstering when the corners get interesting, but the seat is supportive. It's comfortable over long distances. And here, of course, it's heated and cooled. And that's the thing. The driving experience of this CX-5 feels more natural because your body is properly positioned to interface with the CX-5. Yes, there is no volume knob, and yes, there are haptics here on the steering wheel, but they are designed properly. If you're going to have it on the steering wheel, this is the way to go. Everything is here. It's logically laid out. They have great feel. There's actual travel to these buttons, and once you get accustomed to it, it all becomes second nature. I think this is called the Premium Plus in the United States, and it's a GT Premium here in Canada. It has every possible luxury and feature that Mazda could fit to this new CX-5. Heated steering wheel, heated seats, ventilated seats, a 360-degree camera, a hands-free liftgate, the paddle shifters, of course, and adaptive front lighting. Mazda kept the expensive toys all in one place instead of scattering them around the configurator like an escape room. It's simple. You make one decision about trim instead of 14 tiny ones where you quickly lose interest. One of the headlines for this all-new CX-5 is that it's much larger than the previous CX-5. Maybe not in this front row, but definitely in the second row. Still, it's open and airy in this cabin. Very spacious, clever use of cargo space, and that second row has significantly more room than it did in the previous generation. Cargo volume is up both with the rear seats in their upright positions or folded flat, but the harsh reality is that the CR-V still wins on cargo volume. And that's useful information if you're the kind of person whose hobbies involve storage bins. If this episode gave you more information than a brochure or a press release, hit like. It tells YouTube to share this episode with more people like you interested in an episode like this. Takes just a second. I'm legally required to tell you that this segment is sponsored by Go Clean. I'm ethically required to tell you that I use their waterless car wash. Here's the reality of filming cars. They don't have to be perfectly clean, but they have to be clean enough to survive a close-up. I call that video clean. For that job, this waterless car wash is ideal. A few sprays, quick wipe, and the car goes from someone drove it here to camera ready in minutes. I'm not going to oversell it. I use it, I like it, and it's in my kit now. That's video clean. Use code MAX15 for 15% off. That's what the CX-5 told me after a week behind the wheel. Now, this car has finally been in owners' hands long enough for forums to do what forums do best. Find the thing the press launch missed, name it, argue about it, then create 11 separate threads with the same answer. The forums and the subreddits are already pointing to 3 buyer-relevant issues. Early Premium Plus buyers are reporting a day 1 emergency SOS malfunction. 3 loud beeps at startup and a yellow warning triangle that won't clear. The My Mazda remote start app also refuses to connect. Mazda Canada has acknowledged it. Dealers have an e-bulletin and owners have been told an over-the-air fix is coming. Until then, the workaround appears to be a battery disconnect. Then there is iStop, and the previous CX-5 had a physical switch. This 2026 puts that function in a touchscreen menu and then defaults back to on every time you start the car. Owners who hate stop-start are now beginning each drive with a small administrative task. The turbo is the emotional one. The 2.5T is gone, and the hybrid isn't here yet. Former Turbo owners across multiple forums are saying the quiet part out loud. They're skipping the 2026 and hunting for remaining 2025 signature stock instead. That doesn't mean Mazda misread the market. It means the buyer who wanted the fast one now has a very specific used car search alert. None of this changes why the CX-5 exists. The software needs a little cleaning up and the Turbo loyalists are already in mourning, but the chassis is still the reason why anyone should care. If you own one of these or have some quality seat time behind the wheel of one of these, let me know in the comments what I got right and what I got wrong, because real-world owner experiences are much more valuable than anything I can learn in a week-long press loan, and I always read those comments. After all of that, the CX-5 customer becomes pretty easy to identify. It's the Mazda 3 graduate who needs more space and refuses to give up good steering. That buyer's not chasing the biggest cargo number or the quickest hybrid payback math. They care how the front end loads and how the brake pedal modulates. They care whether the car settles through a rough corner or just survives it. The CR-V is easier to recommend to almost everyone. The CX-5 is easier to recommend to the person who enjoys driving. Mazda says 87% of the previous gen CX-5 buyers chose the naturally aspirated 2.5 over the turbo. Online, the turbo's being mourned like Mazda backed over the family dog in the driveway. In reality, Mazda dropped an engine that 13% of buyers ordered. The comments section was loud. The sales ledger was not. Mazda built this car for the 87%. At about $41,000 US or $49,000 Canadian, the CR-V hybrid is sensible. The CX-5 is the answer for the buyer who notices steering weight on the way to Costco and quietly judges the driving habits of strangers. The CX-5 isn't fast and it isn't trying to be. It's trying to feel right from the driver's seat. What I really enjoy about this CX-5 is that it shows Mazda is still interested in building a crossover for drivers like you and me. And they've delivered a crossover that handles confidently and steers better than anything else in the category. Everyone else in the category seems to have agreed that customers want big screens and more cargo volume, and maybe they're right. The cross-shop math is pretty simple. The CR-V or the RAV4 for the school run, the CX-5 for the school run and the long way home. This is hands down the best driving crossover under 50 grand without a BMW badge. That badge will cost you 20 grand and the badge snobs will still pretend that was the practical choice. This CX-5 is the kind of vehicle that Mazda makes by refusing to make the obvious crossover. It gives up straight line punch and hybrid efficiency for some steering that's engaging and handling that's confident. If you only care about the numbers, the CR-V and the RAV4 are waiting. If you care about how a car feels after you close a spreadsheet from the first corner, this CX-5 will happily tell you that Mazda still builds crossovers for drivers. That's the CX-5. Subscribe if you want to see more of these. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store link is here if you want to help fund more of these. See you on the next one.